Yo, welcome back. It's been a while. I'm gonna be making some changes around here. For all of you guys who've been following me for tech-related stuff, that's still gonna be here. Don't worry about it. But I'm gonna kind of widen what the channel is about and post just whatever I like and things along those lines. So I wanted to start today off with two topics mainly. First, Apple is finally switching over to USB-C, and I have kind of a lot to say about it. So, as someone who's primarily dailied iPhones for I don't know the past maybe 5-6 years, I used to be switching back and forth between iPhone and Android pretty frequently, but I kind of stuck with iPhone, for many reasons and stuff. And the one thing that has been pulling me over to Android side has been USB-C. They finally did it. EU has been trying to get USB-C standardized, and they basically did it, but Apple had been lobbying against them. And so now that it's official, the EU requires that this happens by 2024. So technically the next iPhone, the iPhone 15, could still use USB-C, but I don't know if they'll actually do that. I mean, I feel like after saying all this, they'll probably hopefully make the next iPhone USB-C. I had planned to get the 14 this year because I'm usually on a 2-year cycle because I stopped doing the whole every year thing because there just wasn't enough changing. But I'm on a 12 and I'm skipping the 14 because honestly, it's not that big of a difference for me. And so I'm hoping the next one gets USB-C and probably, maybe a design change. That'd be great too. Unfortunately, there's going to be a bit of an e-waste spike now that, all the lightning cables that people are using are basically going to be tossed. And hopefully this means that when they switch to iPhone, they'll also switch AirPods and any of their accessories that are tailored toward iPhone. I mean, at least the only few things that still use Lightning besides the iPhone, I hope those will also switch to USB-C because it's just going to be awkward to have a USB-C iPhone and also have a Lightning cable for your AirPods and things along those lines. So hopefully they switch all that. So I haven't really talked about this on the channel, but I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And I believe it was Wednesday or Tuesday night when I watched it. Tales of the Jedi came out. And for us Star Wars fans, it has been a rocky road ever since Disney bought Star Wars from George Lucas. For the most part, at least for me, and for a lot of people I know, that they've kind of been not doing so hot. Mandalorian was alright. I didn't think it was anything crazy, but I enjoyed it. I know it did really well, with the whole Grogu and, Baby Yoda thing that it blew up. But I'd been waiting for them to do something that was like really up my alley. I think the last thing from them that I thoroughly, really enjoyed was Rogue One. I loved Rogue One. And ever since then, it's been pretty rocky. I wasn't a big fan of the sequels. I think episode 7 was okay, but then 8 and 9 were, I mean, I don't want to get into it, but you guys know, those of you who are on my side of the fandom. But they released Tales of the Jedi, and I watched all 6 episodes on Tuesday night when they released, and we're back. It finally happened. Shout out to Dave Filoni, basically the heir to George Lucas. I don't know why Disney doesn't utilize him more. I mean, he's basically like the savior that they've needed for so long. But I'm glad to see him finally get back to animation. That's kind of where he thrives. So they released 6 episodes. You guys have probably seen it already, but I'll just go over the 6 episodes real quick. The first one called Life and Death is about Ahsoka and her upbringing. You get to see her family and the planet she lives on, and how they find out she's a Jedi. The 4th episode, The Sith Lord, I think that one is top 2 for sure. Maybe you could argue the best episode. So this one, we get to see Yaddle. Finally, you haven't seen her in so long. It's been like 2 decades, since we saw her in the movies. And we get to see basically Dooku and an older Qui-Gon, and he talks about Obi-Wan, which is cool. We get to see an older Dooku and, him struggling, not, because the council doesn't believe in what he's saying. He's trying to tell them about an upcoming darkness, and they're so in the grasp of the Senate that they're blinded by politics, and Dooku has been trying his best to kind of bring them out of that, but they won't listen to what he says, and so he's just trying to figure out what to do in the situation. And so he talks to Yaddle a ton of times, and he figures out Qui-Gon died. And in this version, we're seeing Dooku's perspective when Qui-Gon dies in The Phantom Menace against Maul. and Obi-Wan kills Maul at that time. And so Obi-Wan comes back, but we don't get to see young Obi-Wan this episode. Kind of sucks. I wish they showed young Obi-Wan. That would have been cool. Now, Dooku's standing in front of this force tree at the, in front of Yaddle, or Yaddle's behind him, and she's like trying to console him, but he's just like at the point where he's like, I warned the council that this was going to happen, that a Sith was coming, and they didn't listen. And so now we're kind of seeing, he's like battling. He's on the light and dark, but he's leaning towards the dark side because like he doesn't believe that the Jedi are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're strictly following the politics and things like that. So he flies to this place called the Works. And from what I've heard, it's based on legends. It's a place where Palpatine trained Maul and eventually Dooku. So it's cool to see that he flies there, and then Yaddle follows him because throughout this episode you can see she's kind of catching on that something isn't right with him. So she's been keeping an eye on him, and so they get there. You see Dooku talking to Palpatine. He talks about how apparently at this point already he'd been talking to Palpatine deeply. They'd already been communicating, and he says he's betrayed so many people. He thinks he's done. So by this point he might have killed many people. I think. As far as I know, he killed Sifo Dyas. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, so that happens. We see the fight, Dooku versus Yaddle. I'm surprised. I definitely thought Yaddle was a lot stronger than she is. I mean, she's still a great Jedi, but I mean, Dooku's Dooku. So I guess in a 1v1, Dooku can beat almost anyone, maybe besides Yoda, and Anakin later on. But that was just a great scene, and we see, unfortunately, Yaddle almost dies when Dooku drops a gigantic door on her, but she survives using the Force, but that like drains all the energy she had left after the fight, and he kills her in cold blood, which was crazy. Was not expecting to see that. And that's when he officially becomes a Sith Lord. Next episode, Practice Makes Perfect. I think this one, arguably the 4th and 5th episode, I think the 5th one might have been my favorite, and the 4th one the second. This one we get to see a young Ahsoka training at the temple, and it's really cool because we get to see Anakin being Anakin, him showing up super late because he's not prepared to be a master in the slightest, or to like teach a Padawan. And it's cool because we get to see after kind of the gap in between time when there was that little Clone Wars mini movie where we see Ahsoka show up during the battle, and she's officially become Anakin's Padawan, and he had no clue that he was given a Padawan. She kind of just shows up in the middle of battle, which was cool. But she finally comes, and she's training, and Anakin finally gets there. And then there's this moment where you get to see Kanan in the background with his master, or Caleb Dune as his like official Jedi name from Rebels. I thought that was really cool. They stuck that one in there. Which is surprising that he doesn't I know this is like made after Rebels, but I feel like if they were going to sneak that one in there, it would have been cool if during Rebels he would have recognized Ahsoka more, but whatever. It is what it is. And Anakin's like this like testing that she was doing when she was like fighting against the droids, like that wasn't anything. He's telling her like, if you really want to be prepared, like I'll train you and put you through grueling training. So he like surrounds him with the 501st, like Rex and his, all their clones, and they start stunning. They all start shooting at her, but with stuns. And I think it's just so poetic that we see like him training her, and that training being used in Clone Wars Season 7 when Order 66 is done, and she uses that training to survive the clones. Like any other Jedi in that situation would probably have died because they're being shot from all sides, but she had been through this. So it was just so cool to see how Anakin indirectly trained her to survive Order 66. I just thought that was super poetic, super beautiful. A little bit long-winded, but you get the point. Like I love the series. I thought it was great. I hope we get more. I want more seasons of Tales of the Jedi. They could talk about other Jedi stories. I think that would be great. But I would also love a Tale of the Sith. As someone who hasn't read any of the comics but knows a lot of things that happen within them, I would love for them to talk about a young Palpatine, maybe a Darth Plagueis, Bane, Revan. There's just so many stories that could be talked about that they could bring from Legends, and you don't have to directly adapt them, but put them in animated form. Like, that's easier than doing live action. So I think Dave Filoni, another hit. Just give this man all the money and just like let him go to work. This guy, he knows Star Wars. He's the the heir to George Lucas, and I think if Star Wars is in his hands, then we're in for a good ride. But yeah, that's to wrap it up. Thank you all. It's been a while, a year at least since I posted a video, and I just wanted to come back, and I'm gonna kind of use this to kind of just talk about things I like, whether that's tech related for all of you who've been following me for my tech stuff, and whether it's just things I like, Star Wars, other pop culture things, just whatever. And so yeah, appreciate you for watching. See you guys next time. Peace.